Y'all niggas hungry? I just got done cooking up some exotic cuisine from Egypt.
What is this?
Well, it helps with inflammation, syphilis, or gout, or whatever. Why don't you just dig in?
I don't know about this. This looks, rotten.
That's the hot sauce. Hello and welcome. My name is Witty G, and I talk about odd, obscure, and nostalgic cartoons on the internet, attempting to find out what made them special to begin with. Today we aren't doing some deep dive. I just want to chat with you all about the obsession and fascination with Egyptian culture the Western world has always kind of had, and how that seeps into animation.
Okay, here's the plan. We jump out and we scare the pants off Courtney. Let's hear you roar.
There's like a Mummy episode for every kid's cartoon ever. And I mean, cartoons definitely weren't the first way the West expressed their fascination with the culture. We got video games, comics, invasions, movies, and I alluded to another way this fetishization revealed itself with my opening. I mean, fascination. What?
Ugh, keep your fetish away from me!
Yeah, rich-ass Europeans used to feast on corpses like it was Thanksgiving dinner. Grandmom's home cooking never tasted better. Humans are into freaky shit.
Rotten?
The four cartoons we're going to be checking out all explore ancient Egypt in a unique way and through various genres. Action, adventure, comedy, horror, and sometimes a fusion of these. We're going to rank these cartoons out of 5. Not 5 stars. We're not tackling this like an American. We're ranking it out of pyramids. Wait, what? What do you mean they don't categorize items using pyramids? That's a fucking waste of a metric. Alright. Okay, it's not the standard in the Mediterranean, but we're doing it. And for those of you wondering, why is Egypt so special it gets a whole ass subgenre of cartoon? Look at this? Could you do that? Maybe with a ton of slaves, but you don't have that, do you? So, that's why. When you get some slaves and make multiple great wonders of the world, you'll get a subgenre. Until then,
maybe you got rid of that old yee ass haircut you got, you get some bitches on your dick.
Slaves built the pyramids. Slaves built the Parthenon. Slaves.
Why'd you want to come to the mall? I thought we were gonna play computer games at your house.
Are you sure about that?
Before we get into the cartoons, I want to talk about some of the criteria I'm looking for when ranking these shows. How it looks and sounds. For some of the older ones, we can't fault them that much for bad presentation, but visuals are such a major aspect of cartoons, it's kind of hard to ignore.
Oh well, as long as I'm waiting, I might as well get in a few more scenic shots.
Excuse me, but the pyramids are over there.
Is it educational? This can be from the lens of teaching about Egyptian culture, taking elements of Egyptian mythology and fusing them with the show, or simply facts about the ancient world.
Set was the Egyptian god of chaos. It is said that he who possesses the staff controls the elemental forces of nature: earth, wind, fire, and water.
Ha! Not mummy enough to fight his own battles, eh?
Man, shut your bitch ass up.
I'm persuaded to give more points to shows that don't make it overtly obvious they're trying to teach the audience. Little subtlety is great. And lastly, is this a show I would have enjoyed as a kid, or could I see someone enjoying it? To give you an idea of where my taste lies, here are some of my favorite cartoons as a kid. This is the competition they'll be matched with in terms of entertainment.
I should just turn myself in at the nearest glue factory.
Aren't glue factories for horses?
So? You're saying I wouldn't make a good quality adhesive?
It is very hard to out-entertain Fanboy and Chum Chum. I'll be trying to see if their premises are held up well by good episodes. Is there some side content in the episodes that viewers can latch on to?
In Egypt, you let me take rhapsodies in my chariot when you thought I was a man. Do you doubt me now because you know I'm a woman?
Are the characters charismatic and enjoyable? Are the set pieces cinematic? All the stuff. Next, we gotta touch on some tropes of this subgenre. There are a few recurring elements that show up in shows like this. A museum? There's always a museum in these shows. The fish out of water trope is abundant. This is a storytelling device where a character is placed in a completely unfamiliar or drastically different environment, causing them to feel awkward, uncomfortable, and out of place. Mummies. You can't have an ancient Egyptian TV show without mummies. Magic, and specifically, shadow magic. You'd be surprised with how often this comes up. And lastly, evil high councils or advisors.
I see your grandfather's spirit in your eyes.
What?
This is Mummies Alive, not to be confused with Mummies Dead. That's the name of the exhibit at your local museum.
How long I have waited.
A 90s action cartoon that seems like a fusion between Power Rangers and Egyptian culture. There are even over-the-top transformation sequences that seem to take up half of the episode duration, just like Power Rangers. And if you're wondering how 90s this show really is, look at this mall. This kid mentions cable TV, and when an Egyptian snake god comes back to life and is told that he has to become the new it thing to lure in the pharaoh of the modern era, he does this by forming a rock band, parodying Got Milk commercials, and selling popsicles. This would have maintained the attention span of anyone in the 2000s.
Got pep?
The show begins when an archaeologist opens up a cursed tomb, reading the warning label and deciding, fuck it.
Woe to him who breaks the seal, for he shall...
This frees Scarab, this evil, wrinkled man, former head advisor to the pharaoh who spent the last couple of centuries sealed off in this prison. You know, he looks great for his age. Fast forward a few years in the future to San Francisco, where they rediscover color and a new exhibit opens up with this Sphinx design. Curated by the main character's mom, Presley discovers he's actually connected to ancient pharaohs, carrying the spirit of Ramses inside of him.
Hold it, hold it! I can handle that I'm talking to real mummies, sort of. But I'm not a young prince. I do not have some funky old spirit inside of me.
And with that comes the protection of the Guardians.
Hey, Presley, did you bring the Mr. Beefy burgers?
4 color-coded mummies bound to serve the pharaoh, because Scarab wants eternal life, and this new incarnation of Ramses is key to that.
Gray hair. My gray hairs. I'm growing old.
We find out that this guy was originally imprisoned by the father of ancient Egyptian Ramses, because Scarab killed his son. Yeah. The spirit that lies within Presley was lured into the desert and stabbed up by this advisor to the pharaoh. It's kind of dark. Scarab now lives in this high-rise building, quickly aging, while when around regular humans, he wears a disguise that portrays him as a ruthless Silicon Valley businessman. He's actually the finance behind this museum's exhibit. The episodes see the group deal with evil spirits summoned to the human world by Scarab, often coming through the West Gate, which is located at the Golden Gate Bridge, but only visible to ancient Egyptians, or those with connections to that world. The team deals with these spirits and Scarab's multiple plans to kidnap this kid. He is not very good at this. There are like 48 episodes detailing his failures. Surely there's a lesson or two on Skillshare to better at this. As mentioned before, a lot of these cartoons deal with the whole fish out of water trope, with the mummies being blown away by science.
The planet's surface is made of these huge plates that slide against each other.
TVs, running water, and cars with horsepower. God damn.
This chariot is most swift.
It ought to be. It's got 180 horses under the hood.
They must be very small horses.
I guess when you come from a time that thought the sun was a deity, cell phones and punk music are definitely gonna blow your mind. One of the topics touched on that I wasn't expecting from this cartoon was sexism. So in the group of protectors, we got these 4 guys. Notice anything weird? Anything out of the ordinary? My observant viewers will notice one of these isn't a fucking dude. Something these mummies that have been her allies since forever have never realized.
I am Jakal, this is Armon and Raf, and he is Nefer.
You mean she?
No, you're just a boy. How would you know?
Actually, the prince is right.
Turns out she was pretending to be a guy just so she could ride the chariots, something women weren't allowed to do at the time.
I am Nefertina. I only pretended to be a man, since women are not allowed to drive the chariots of the pharaoh.
On the contrary, looks like some women with clout were able to drive chariots with or without men, but a woman portraying herself in a masculine role to get equal respect is something tied to Egyptian history. Let's take a quick look at this female pharaoh of ancient Egypt, who was depicted as a man in artwork. Why did she do that?
Well, let me think.
Well, she didn't do it to disguise herself, but rather to signify that, although she was a woman, she commanded the same respect as a male pharaoh. And we see that play out in its own way with the struggle Nefertina has with Jakal, the leader of the Guardians.
The hot Ra stays.
That's not fair!
We must stay close to Rapses.
Ugh. You don't trust my judgment, you don't trust me!
Why should I?
In our group of protectors, we got some basic character traits. Smart one, leader, goofy hungry one.
Did you bring the Mr. Beefy burgers?
And girl. Okay, she's not just girl. She's also the most adventurous and willing to take a risk, which also happen to be standard feminine traits, so girl. What's interesting, other than the nods to Egyptian mythology, are the small bits we learn about the mummies. Like how Jakal misses his wife and young child, who have been lost to the sands of time.
Page, I read about did you say want to a 10-year-old with Down syndrome being taken from her mother? How dare you?
How Nefertina was discriminated against because of her gender, and probably stuff for these two, but I didn't get that far. They're also powered up by Ra, the sun god, and they only have a certain amount of time they can use this power before they all get tuckered out. To charge this back up, they gotta get some Z's in their sarcophagi.
After we rest and restore our powers.
Otherwise, we'll be dead on our feet.
Dead. I get it.
And yeah, you're right, it is just like a cell phone.
We must rest in our sarcophagi to renew it.
Kind of like my mom's cell phone.
The strongest element of this show is the aesthetic and the fight scenes. They're so over the top. This guy's head turns into a snake. They have a boat for some reason. They have this car called the Hot Rod. Okay, that's pretty good. And I like the art style with the deep shadows, painted backgrounds, and the way light looks, which is a pretty big visual motif in the show. It's always present when they transform or use their powers, reminiscent of who they get their abilities from. And there's also a cat, because Egyptians love felines, almost as much as they love triangles. Overall, I like the way the show looks. The stories are similar, with a pretty standard format. It doesn't give a lot of historical knowledge, but does point to interesting elements of Egyptian religion and deities.
Now, Presley, is this how you handle your responsibilities?
We'll give this 3 pyramids out of 5. Real quick, the character Jakal is voiced by a guy named Dale Wilson. My low-tier god senses went off when I saw this. The LTG was a Mummies Alive voice actor.
It's disgusting, it's unsanitary for a dude to piss in a toilet, so preferably I use a bottle.
What?
And to be regular? You want them to be regular? You want to force me to be regular?
Okay, of course not. It just doesn't make sense with the way time works. And also, the nigga can't act.
Chance, nigga, your ass is mine. God!
Another important fact is that this kid's name isn't Ramses, it's Rapses. I just realized this shit.
Is that okay?
This nigga got rhymes and poetry in the beginning of his legal. Store brand pharaoh type shit. We got Egyptian culture at home head ass. And a white kid with the name Rapses is probably the most 90s thing about this show. The Mummy the Animated Series is the follow-up to the 1999 movie. Bet you didn't know there was an animated spin-off to this classic franchise.
USA! USA! USA!
It's an American thing.
Another underrated gem released not too long after 9/11. 2001 was such a gnarly year. Sadly, this adaptation is missing the lovely and talented Brendan Fraser. Instead, we got this void of charisma.
I don't know what we'd do without you, Jonathan, but sometimes I'd sure like to try.
He's alright, really, but he's no Brendan Fraser.
Hey, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I would have enjoyed this interview a lot more if I had gotten my cup of coffee! Thank you.
We see Alex, his dad, and his hot mom travel across the world trying to find the Scroll of Thieves while avoiding Imhotep the Mummy, occasionally accompanied by Uncle Jonathan, the cowardly, greedy older brother of Evie.
Life would be so much easier if that boy was cowardly like his dear uncle.
Unlike all the other cartoons, the Mummy in this series is the bad guy, kind of playing on old stereotypes. It's 2001, come on. The first episode opens with a discovery made by the O'Connell family in Scotland. After bringing this back to the British Museum, Evie is given a promotion. She's told to hunt for more artifacts out in the field like she did with the Book of the Dead. Technically, she didn't find this book in the original movie. She found Imhotep and brought him alive by reading from this book. That was an accident, by the way.
But that's behind us. It doesn't do any good to look back.
However, at the museum, an academic rival of Evie's, Colin Weasler, gets jealous, saying he should have gotten the promotion and the chance to head to a dig site in Egypt, and he doesn't handle rejection well. So unwell that he steals the book and resurrects the mummy that started all the problems in the first movie. Meanwhile, at the dig site, the group finds the Manacle of Osiris, a powerful artifact that is really hard to understand without the instruction manual. That manual is the Scroll of Thieves, which seems to have been misplaced thousands of years ago. While playing in the tent where the artifact was, Alex gets the magical bracelet stuck to his wrist Ben 10 style.
It's not a bracelet.
This item has tremendous powers Alex can't control and comes with a little clairvoyance. These visions happen at random and usually don't provide Alex with a lot of context until the very last second, like a nerf version of That's So Raven.
Right on.
Come here, let me tickle your
But at least it can shoot lasers. With the mummy revived, his goals are to obtain the manacle and the scrolls. Unfortunately, the instruction manual is lost somewhere in the world, and the artifact is stuck to a 10-year-old's wrist. Shouldn't be too much of a problem for this guy because the mummy in this series is kind of a beast, summoning water dragons, fire dogs, undead soldiers, shadow creatures, giant rockmen. The list could go on. The medium of animation gives a lot more options for how the mummy wants to wreak havoc, and I think it suits him better than live action and CGI. Unfortunately for our antagonist, things just aren't going his way.
All I want is immortality. Is that too much to ask?
He's kinda stuck between the living and the dead, since Evie manages to recite some of the spell that sends Imhotep back to the realm of the unalive, but gets interrupted at the last moment by none other than the Weasel.
Real bad man.
Leaving the mummy in limbo with diminished power, so the quest becomes to find the Scroll of Thieves by tracking its location throughout history, including trips to the Library of Alexandria, underwater temples, and New York with Babe Ruth.
Here's a tip. Head down, elbows in, and keep your eyes on the prize.
All this while flying in a big-ass Zeppelin. Very inconspicuous, very low profile, very demure. Some of you may have noticed some similarities between this premise and the second movie, with ancient wristwear and all. Well, the series was released a couple months after the sequel, and in terms of a timeline, the events of this story happened right after the second movie. In fact, the show was created to bolster more popularity for the franchise, and ended up being cancelled by 2003 because it wasn't able to find its audience. Back to the adventure. Alex skips out on school to be able to go on this archaeological trip around the world, but school hasn't skipped out on him.
There's a reason they're called dead languages. Nobody uses them anymore but you.
Alex, as long as you're not enrolled in a proper school, I'm your teacher.
Come on, Mom. Instead of doing dumb homework, we could be looking for the Scrolls of Thebes. Think of it as extra credit.
He's forced to learn arithmetic and ancient languages, as well as how to avoid booby traps in a comprehensive homeschool program. Usually, in order to do homeschool, one of the parents has to give up their career to become a full-time parent-teacher, or you both can go on a globe-trotting adventure trying to outrun a psychopathic mummy. Take your pick.
I think we lost him!
Think again!
While the scrolls are the most important part of the quest, it's not always what causes the group to solve a mystery. Like when they get stuck in Australia and have to deal with a lava monster alongside the indigenous peoples there. Alex almost falls into the boiling ocean when the lava starts to raise the temperature of the water while he's surfing. Things definitely start to heat up. Unlike the other action program, Mummies Alive, this show actually feels dangerous. Like the characters don't really have any time to rest or think. This is great because it keeps the audience interested and on their toes, and you really don't know how some of these confrontations will play out. It's also good that the conflicts in these episodes aren't simply handled by Rick being stronger than the mummy. The solution to the O'Connell's problems are always a mix of brain and brawn.
Oh great mummy, please take pity on me.
Prepare to meet your doom!
The show is a really great blend of history and fantasy.
When Tutankhamun was my age, he ruled all of Egypt. Betcha he didn't have to listen to his parents or do homework. All he had to do was, the mummy!
Do the mummy? Personally, I'd rather do the Charleston.
Pointing to real locations and people, like the Library of Alexandria and Alexander the Great, and making them core parts of the adventure. At one point, the scrolls were said to be with Alexander the Great during his conquering of everything to the east.
With few exceptions, you don't just knock on the door on one side of a country, march on over to the other side, and own everything in between by the time you're done. Only Alexander could get away with this kind of thing, because he was so good at tactics on the battlefield. Go east was the only strategy he needed.
Mr. the Great's conquered territory was huge, leaving Evie to try and figure out how it relates to the current location of the scrolls, getting the audience curious about which historically important location will be tackled next. So yeah, this show is definitely one of the stronger ones with great writing, pacing, and presentation. Though the character designs, I feel definitely could have been stronger and more defined. Everybody looks so bland. We'll give it 4 pyramids out of 5. And that's where we'll end it today. There are 2 more cartoons we have to check out, and they're weird as hell.
Some of that ancient Egyptian stuff is just made up. Don't believe everything you read.
There's an ancient Egyptian sorceress turned into a babysitter in the modern era.
Oh, there you are! We must hurry, noble master.
These dripless fits. And a pharaoh who gets revived, only to have demons try to plunge him back into the underworld and take his title. Oh, and this pharaoh is the renowned King Tut, who was only relatively recently found back in November of 1922.
You call on Ra and whoever, and they give you the power to kick butt, right?
But why in the name of Ra would anyone want to kick Tut?
So if you enjoyed this video and would like part 2 to come out soon, leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss it. All that stuff helps the channel and keeps me motivated to keep making videos. If you'd like me to talk about more cartoons, let me know which ones you're feeling in the comments. I've been Witty G, and remember, be happy, be healthy, and don't awaken mummies that plan on plunging the world into thousands of years of darkness and evil.
You wouldn't understand.
See ya.